Hello everyone and welcome back to English with Kayleigh. In today's video we're going to analyse another one of Jackie Kay's poems, and this one is entitled Pride. So just before we get into it, I do have resources for teaching and studying Jackie Kay. They're over on my Teacher Pay Teachers account. I also upload them to the test website as well, so hopefully those will help you as you work to teach or study Jackie Kay's work. So first of all, we're going to read Pride. It's one of Kay's longer poems, especially in the collection of 32 that you need to study for the Cambridge A-level exam. Then we'll look at the themes and we'll discuss some background, and then we'll do our stanza by stanza analysis, and we'll end with some AO5. So let's read through Pride. So when I looked up, the black man was there, staring into my face, as if he had always been there, as if he and I went a long way back. He looked into the dark pool of my eyes as the train slid out of Euston. For a long time this went on. The stranger and I looked at each other, a look that was like something being given from one to the other. My whole childhood, I'm quite sure, passed before him. The worst things I've ever done, the biggest lies I've ever told, and he was a little boy on a red dust road. He stared into the dark depth of me, and then he spoke. Ibbo, he said. Ibbo, definitely. Our train rushed through the dark. You are an Ibbo, he said, thumping the table. My coffee jumped and spilled. Several sleeping people woke. The night train boasted and whistled through the English countryside, past unwritten stops in the blackness. That nose is an Ibbo nose. Those teeth are Ibbo teeth, the stranger said, his voice getting louder and louder. I had no doubt from the way he said it that Ibbo noses are the best noses in the world, that Ibbo teeth are perfect pearls. People were walking down the trembling aisle to come and look as the night rain babbled against the window. There was a moment when my whole face changed into a map, and the stranger on the train located even the name of my village in Nigeria in the lower part of my jaw. I told him what I'd heard was my father's name, Okfor. He told me what it meant, something stunning, something so apt and astonishing. Tell me, I asked the black man on the train, who was himself transforming at roughly the same speed as the train, and could have been at any stop, my brother, my father as a young man, or any member of my large clan. Tell me about the Ibbos. His face had a look I've seen on a McLaren, a MacDonald, a MacLeod. The most startling thing, pride, a quality of being certain. Now that I know you are an Ibbo, we will eat. He produced a spicy meat patty, ripping it into two. Tell me about the Ibbos. The Ibbos are small in stature, not tall like the Yoruba or Hausa. The Ibbos are clever, reliable, dependent, faithful, true. The Ibbos should be running Nigeria. There would be none of this corruption. And what, I asked, are the Ibbos' faults? I smiled my newly acquired Ibbo smile, flashed my gleaming Ibbo teeth. The train grabbed at a bend. Faults? No faults, not a single one. If you went back, he said, brightening, the whole village would come out for you. Massive celebrations. Definitely, definitely. He opened his arms wide. The eldest grandchild, fantastic pet welcome, if the grandparents are alive. I saw myself arriving, the hot dust, the red road, the trees heavy with other fruits, the bright things, the flowers. I saw myself watching the old people dance towards me, dressed up for me in happy prints, and I found my feet. I started to dance. I danced a dance I never knew I knew. Words and sounds fell out of my mouth like seeds. I astonished myself. My grandmother was like me exactly, only darker. When I looked up, the black man had gone. Only my own face startled me in the dark train window. So that's Pride by Jackie Kay. And of course, the central theme is about identity. So before we get into the stanza analysis, we're just going to take a look at some of Kay's own words, and then some background information. So Kay actually wrote a novel called Red Dust Road in 2011. So the poem itself, Pride, is in off colour, and these poems explore illness, sickness and health, past and present, in a dynamic and original way. And of course, they examine not only the sick body, but sick mind and sick society and racism and prejudice. But Red Dust Road, which was written in 2011, this is actually an autobiographical piece of her tracing and finding her birth parents. And she goes to Nigeria to look for her birth father. So from the moment when, as a little girl, she realized that her skin is of a different color from that of her beloved mum and dad, to the tracing and finding of her own birth parents, her Highland mother and Nigerian father, Jackie Kay's journey in Red Dust Road is one of unexpected twists, turns and deep emotions. And we get this warm but unsentimental journey into nature, nurture and identity, which is, of course, very also mimicked in the poem that she wrote in the late 90s in Pride. So some background information. So the Igbo people are one of the largest ethnic groups in Africa. Their language is part of the Nigerian Congo language family. It's divided into numerous regional dialects and somewhat mutual with the larger Igboid cluster. And the other two places mentioned, the Yoruba and Hausa, are other ethnic groups in West and Northern Nigeria, respectively. So just some important background information that you can then apply to your understanding of the poem, the message behind it, because to hit that AO1, you need to show that you understand the poem in the wider context. So given the length of the stanzas, I've just selected one or two things to discuss in each. But if you have any specific questions, you can pop them in the comments below, and we can discuss them. So first of all, we'll just do a kind of overview of what happens in the stanza, and then we'll pick out some key things. So of course, the first stanza is this initial meeting between the two strangers on the train. However, there seems to be a kind of strange familiarity between the two of them. And I think that the train itself is quite important here for Kay's journey. We see the train as it slides out of Euston, and that the speed of the train really mimics the speed of the realization and the pride in Kay's identity. We see as we move deeper into the poem, the speed of the train, it becomes much faster. But by the end, the train actually almost falls out of sight, and all we're left with is the pride in the identity of the speaker. So in stanza 2, here we see this encounter between the two, and Kay finds out that she is Igbo, with the man telling her, Igbo, Igbo, definitely. But what is important is that we already have a reference. Many years before she writes Red Dust Road, we have the reference to Kay's autobiographical novel, and that imagined journey to Africa. So we can just, it goes back to show how influential and important that journey of identity and pride and self-realization of who she was as a person has impacted Kay's work all throughout. all throughout her career. My coffee jumped and spilled. There's this personification here, this almost, the transferring of feelings onto these inanimate objects, very hyperbolic, and it does add this sense of humor to the poem, which is of course quite characteristic of Kay's work. So then we move on to stanza 3, and stanza 3 is a stanza of discovery where Kay learns more specific details that are shared here, and through that sharing and understanding. And we see that the Igbo noses are the best noses in the world, that Igbo teeth are perfect pearls. So throughout the next few stanzas, we see a number of superlatives, and the poem also links to the poem Teeth, and how teeth are a clear display of one's identity. But the assertion is idealized. And I think that this is true for anyone when searching for maybe who you are, or in trying to figure that out, especially in finding out knowledge of one's heritage. They may very much focus on the good, and evade or move away from maybe some of the darker truths of one's past or heritage. So stanza 4 is obviously where we see these questions that are coming from Kay, and a discussion that comes from these questions, and her longing for answers about her identity are realized. Something stunning, something so apt and astonishing. So once again, we have this idealized idea of the Igbos, who she is and where she's from, and what they are like. And as it moves on through the stanza, we see the man himself is transforming at roughly the same speed as the train. And I think this is where we start to foreshadow, and we start to realize actually that the man's true identity in that, and we start to question, is it Kay herself that she sees, and is it her own discussion and her own realization, which very much links to the message, which we'll discuss at the end of the poem. But the stanza ends with this imperative, tell me about the Igbos. That longing is emphasized here. So then we move to stanza 5. So his face had a look I'd seen on a McLaren, a McLeod, a MacDonald. So in this stanza, pride is finally achieved, okay? And that sense of pride for Jackie Kay in who she is. And she learns more about the qualities of her people. And it's very interesting in that she mentions the pride of Scottish clans, and that she's seen that sense of that quality of being certain in the people around her, that they know who they are, where they come from, and this is something finally she's able to achieve. And he says, and the character says, now I know you are an Igbo, we will eat. He produced a spicy meat patty, again foreshadowing this idea of the imagination, this imagined exchange between two people. Stanza 6 then talks about the identity, and this is Kay's own identity. And she says, I smiled my newly acquired Igbo smile, flashed my gleaming Igbo teeth, embracing her new identity. And I've put new there in kind of, inverted commas, because it was always her identity, but she's finally at a point where she accepts it and feels pride in it. So stanza 7 and stanza 8, they both go further into this imagination, and we see this dreamlike return to Africa. And if we look at stanza 8 in particular, a number of the lines start with I, and this repetition of I really reflects the pride in who the speaker is now, and in that journey of self-acceptance and realization. I saw myself arriving. So we see her arriving to her land, to her destination. However, the description that we get of Kay's journey to Africa is very unfamiliar, and therefore the vocabulary and the words that are used reflect that. The tree's heavy with other fruits, the bright things. There's this sense of unfamiliarity and that she's still learning about her heritage and her country. And we see that throughout the stanza. And stanza 9 ends with a couplet. When I looked up, the black man had gone. And this is obviously a quaint nod to the beginning, as she's looked up and saw the man. She's looked up and she's realized and she's learned. But now the man has gone, which is interesting when you're on a moving train. And therefore, we begin to link parts of the story together. Only my own face startled me. So she sees her own reflection and she's shocked by it, because obviously she's gone through this change. And now she seems foreign to herself once more, and she needs to navigate and learn who she is and where she's from in the dark train window. And of course, this is where it's finally revealed that it was indeed herself that she's interacted with, and she's had this exchange, this inner experience, this internal dialogue that has helped her to achieve this pride. So the ending is very significant because it suggests pride of one's image can come from within when we allow ourselves to accept that and embrace who we are. And the startled also emphasizes the extent to which her face has changed in her eyes. As I said, we get the sense that she's almost foreign to herself once more, and now it's the beginning of a journey which may well have ended in that autobiographical piece in 2011 in journeying back to Africa. So the encounter with the man enables her to imagine and metaphorically travel to Africa. More specific details about where and how she would be welcomed allows for this to happen. But as I said at the start, it is very interesting that the train becomes increasingly scarcely mentioned, and that allows Kay to really focus her attention on the growth and the transformation of the speaker and of herself as well. So to wrap up, let's just look at the form and the speaker and AO5 you could apply to this poem. So it's 9 stanzas long, written in free verse, and of course the stanzas vary in length from 2 lines all the way up to 19. There's a hint of rhyme through the techniques that are used, the assonance, consonants, and the half rhyme, and it very much reflects the journey of self-realization, that it's not always harmonious. There are things that we need to learn. It takes time, but also that undertone of that physical movement of the train and that journey that Kay goes on within the poem. So the speaker is Kay herself. So this poem is actually included in her memoir, The Red Dust Road, and it talks about that journey to find one's identity. So lots you could use for AO5 here. So you could use Kay, her own words on life experiences, when she says events alter our identity and reshape the course of our lives. You could also look at Hakova with the poet as a cultural dentist, in which she references teeth and pride quite a lot. Meryl Curin is another one. And finally, you could also look at the psychoanalytical theory, given that this piece is deeply autobiographical for Kay, and looks at that imagination in who we are. So I hope that this video has helped you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye guys.